Alright, this here's the this is just the video summary of today. Some people don't like PowerPoint, just feels like a conversation. But today we talked about several different topics. There's one conversation, especially with very advanced people or native speakers or people who speak very well. In 50 minutes you can talk about many topics and words and ideas. Right? So that's what happened today. We talked a lot about that. So we talked about, first there was a picture, we talked about parking in front of a fire hydrant. That, you know, they teach us, do not park in front of a fire hydrant. But some people do it. So the firemen, they broke the window of a car. Sometimes this is in the news, and they just put the fire hose through the window and put out the fire. Because they say, we don't have time to call the fire department. We call a tow truck, rather. And I think, I mean, parking in front of a fire hydrant is a bad idea. But sometimes firefighters and groups like that, they're kind of like a little bit kind of strong sometimes, in some ways. Okay, then we started talking about Frankfurt, and we talked about schools in Frankfurt and the city and the neighborhoods. We looked at pictures on the internet and really beautiful houses. But we talked about like Korean people or Korean students or university students, when they study in a foreign school, or they go to maybe a private school there or something, they might come back to Korea and they might sometimes not know enough about Korean history or not be interested. Maybe because they have to learn a lot of Chinese words and Chinese characters that are like, oh, it's too much and I don't know this Chinese word. I then said, oh wow, that's pretty interesting, because I look at photos of history in the Korean War, and they talk a lot about, or I'll see pictures of the Korean language, but then there'll be a lot of Chinese words in there, and I think, oh wow, this is Korean. They really used a lot of Chinese in the past. They heavily relied on that. Okay. Then we talked about some words that professors use, words that are common in, that high school students don't use these words, or even university students kind of say, what's that word? And I had remembered them telling me about the word ruddy. Well, my professor used that, and I thought, okay, what's that mean? It's like a red complexion. A person whose face is pale and sick, that's not ruddy, but they have a healthy, maybe some Irish people or somebody from England, they had a healthy complexion, I guess. That would be ruddy. But it also, I looked it up, it was in the Harry Potter movie, where one of the guys said, he's a ruddy pumpkinhead, isn't he? Which he means bloody, but bloody's a British curse word. Me, for an American, I don't feel an impact from the word bloody. Doesn't really register for me too much. We talked about the difference between being an expert in an area. Like, let's say you study here in the company, and you're like an expert in your area. Maybe, I don't know, engines or repair or something. Your knowledge will be different than someone who is a professor. Even though I kind of think it's very similar, but because the knowledge here, it's different, because it's not necessarily based on theory, but it's real life experience, which is kind of cool. So we talked about that. We talked about the words plagiarism, that a big no-no in American universities is copying the work of somebody. And also a word came up that I'm trying to use and learn. This word autodidact, not a common word at all, but I saw it in a book I was reading about Einstein and his history, or like a book about his life, because Einstein studied by himself a lot in the university, and then later joined, or in a government office, the patent office, and then later joined the university. So there were some issues there, like he wasn't the best teacher. They gave him like the early morning 7 or 8 a.m. class that nobody came to. He used to ask him questions, well, what's this here? But that was just part of it, though. And then we talked about Katusa, that came up, and we also mentioned like saying words, words that like begin with the letter I or something. Say as many of those as you can. Inculcate, inchoate, insult. This is an exercise for practicing vocabulary. Anyway, that's all.